Where did you study, volunteer, or work abroad? For how long? What was your experience like? Were the people there, were the people around you aware of your disability, and how did they react to it?
So, like I said, I studied in the United Kingdom. I went to the College of Law of England and Wales. Um, and how how was that experience? The experience was great. Were people aware of my disability? As far my professors were, um, instructors, the students, other than you know me, they're like just conversations. They know that I think I did say, oh, I have ADHD, and which is why I appear to be scatterbrained. But and at that time I wasn't medicated. Now I have medication. I didn't know how to speak up for it back then. Um, the depression, um, privately to other students, but not, it wasn't a big thing where I stood up in class and said, hey, I have depression, you know. Um, but my instructors knew that. Now, when I went to work abroad, then yes, like when I went to Germany, and gave a speech on, I talked about advocacy and activism using hashtags on Twitter and how Twitter is used for disability advocacy. And that was in 2018. So that experience actually was really empowering. Getting to connect with community, with other people with disabilities, um, overseas was really empowering. I was at a conference. It was at a tech conference, one of the Republica, which is one of the largest tech conferences in Europe. And they have different tracks for things. And so I was taught on the social media track and talking about like social media, disability, and advocacy. And through there, I was able to, I had, it was an audience of several hundred people. And because also Chelsea Manning was talking at the same time, and I'm going, nobody's gonna come to my speech, and I had like 300-400 people in there, so I didn't have any, but that, but the people, the experience, like I said, it was really empowering. People learned, they got to learn different viewpoints, but also I had like a breakout session where people could talk directly with me and talk about disability and disability advocacy and what it is that I do. And so getting to interact and find out what's going on in other countries, what was going on in Germany, as far as like disability rights and disability activism and education. Um, that was very impactful, and I'm glad I got to have that experience. In Canada, I went. Last year I gave the opening keynote for the Guelph Sexuality Conference, and that was, yes, that people, after I talked, there were people that came up to me who said, hey, you have experience in something that my partner is going through. And so they were talking, so we were able to have an exchange, where I think I think his partner was newly diagnosed with something, and how that impacted them in some ways. And so I just gave some strategies, and but also having that exchange, talking about services, because disability services, that what's available in one country is not the same as available over here. And so that was my experience, is the how with disability, that experience just really impacted me, because it taught me that you have to look at the world in order to, because disability is a human condition, so it's something that humans, it's a global issue, and so humans experience disability. But I know that culturally, disability is treated differently. Different disabilities are viewed in different ways. So getting that experience, kind of drove that home for me as far as like attitudes and accommodations and how people see or view disability, and how they are aware of it, and what laws, are enacted. So my experiences have been, they've been positive. I haven't, other than, going some, as a visitor, I've gone to Israel, I've gone to Japan, I've gone to whatever. And so getting to see what counts as access or what disabilities are supported was very eye-opening about what was considered accommodation. And I was wondering why in Israel I wasn't seeing people with wheelchairs out, just, folks with, because it's not accessible. You can't get out anywhere. So, that was, I was like, oh, whoa, because, you don't see like the ramps and stuff that are everywhere because they don't have the same laws. And because that was different. And so that experience taught me a lot. And were the people around me? Yeah. Okay. So, and how they reacted. Yeah. It was positive, especially because I was brought in to talk about, subjects related to disability.
Was your mental health impacted negatively at any point while you were abroad because of anything related to your disability?
My mental health, I think I was a little I remember in Germany I did experience a bit of depression related to, and with depression causes you to think about things differently and to view things in a negative light that aren't necessarily, how it's the reality of what's going on. But I did have an evening, at this conference that I felt just really cut off, and I felt really sad about that. And I just went to my hotel room and kind of separated myself there for the evening, even though, that was the last evening of this conference, and I should have just been going out and networking and talking and finding out as much as I could, because this was a really great conference with all kinds of fascinating people, but I was depressed because I felt I had in my head I felt like I wasn't understood. But more than that, I think it was because I was afraid, because I didn't speak German, and a lot of people there were German speakers. And so I was having to, it gets kind of exhausting relying on someone else to interpret for you all the time. And then I just kind of like, okay, I'm out of my element here. I seem ignorant because I only speak English and I don't speak both English and German. And so I'm going to go home. And I did that. And I wish that my depression hadn't impacted me like that, because I could, that last night would have been a really great night to actually, to get to socialize and, that social aspect, because they had, like activities and like dance and all this kind of stuff. And I didn't do that because I was depressed. And so that negatively impacted me. I missed out on I feel like I missed out on being able to connect with
Mhm.
uh, people who could, hear more, that could hear what I had to say, and where we could have, possibly worked together on something,
Yeah.
or a project.